Next, now, it's the end of a heartbreaking and socially significant court case today. The murder of 18-year-old white boy Henry Nowak at the hands of a knife-wielding Sikh murderer. Let's get the full story from GB News South of England reporter Isabel Fekulak, who is outside court. Isabel, for anybody that's just coming in from work who aren't familiar with what's happened today and why this case is so chilling, just fill us in on what we've heard.
Yes, good evening, Bev. I'm here outside Southampton Crown Court. The verdicts came in on this harrowing case today, finding Vikram Digwa, 23-year-old Sikh man, guilty of 2 charges: murder of 18-year-old student from Essex, Henry Nowak, and carrying a knife in public. His mum also on trial here for assisting the perpetrator by removing the weapon from the scene. That weapon, as you say, is that Sikh ceremonial knife, a kirpan, a knife carried by initiated Sikhs as a mandatory article of faith. This murder weapon was a 21-centimetre, 8-inch blade that was used to stab Henry Nowak 5 times, 3 times in the front, in his groin, chest, that was the fatal wound, and across his face, and twice in the back of the legs. The prosecution said that's as he was trying to get away from his killer. Now, on the 3rd of December last year, he was walking home from a night out. He bumped into an absolute stranger, Vikram Digwa. They had an altercation, and it led to him pulling out this kirpan and using it to kill Henry Nowak. At the scene, he called the police. His brother arrived and they dialed 999. They said that they were racially attacked by a white boy. However, the prosecution heard that that was just a wicked lie they used to cover their tracks. Henry Nowak, transcripts from the night, hear him saying that he has been stabbed, that he can't breathe. He's begging Digwa, please brother, I'm dying. While this is happening, Digwa is telling police officers about his bruised eye and telling them also that Henry Nowak was pretending, because he said that he thought his condition was, he was acting like his condition was worse than it was. Sadly, at the scene, this is the really harrowing part. The police handcuffed Henry Nowak, arrested him in the moments before he lost consciousness. Now, they apologise for their part in this. They said it took them 3 minutes to start administering first aid, but Henry Nowak died at the scene.
Apologies to anybody if you are coming in. I realise this is a very harrowing story that we're hearing here, and the details of this might be upsetting or distressing for anybody. Let me go to my panel, Kelvin McKenzie. If the police have for years been told the worst thing you can be is racist, and there has been a problem with racism in the police, absolutely. But if you've been told that over and over again, isn't that at the forefront of your mind in those situations, rather than the well-being of the victim who's bleeding on the floor?
Well, this is a beyond shocking case. And the truth is, you're right, they've been brainwashed. They're brainwashed. If you're a senior cop in this country, you are fundamentally anti-white, right? You start from the position that the white guy has done something wrong and the black guy or the brown guy they're fine. So we'll believe them, despite the fact that a white youth is now dying in front of you, you still handcuff them. Imagine this. Supposing it was the other way round. That was a black lad that was dying, and the white lad had made up the racist lies. Tell me this, wouldn't we have Starmer on? Wouldn't we have Lammy on? Wouldn't we have the Home Secretary on? Wouldn't we have 1,001 statements from Labour politicians, and actually, funnily enough, Tory politicians, were they in power? Wouldn't we have heard a lot by now? And what have we heard, Bev? Tell me, what have we heard?
From the politicians, not enough,
right,
frankly.
No, we haven't heard anything. All we've heard is from a shadow Tory Home Office guy actually making probably similar comments to mine, right? But we're not interested in that. The Labour have got a 400-seat majority or whatever, right? This is a disgraceful case, and also I noticed that they didn't even wheel out the Chief Constable here, did they? Wasn't it Assistant Chief Constable?
Deputy Chief Constable,
yeah. Well, where's the Chief Constable? After all, there is not a more important person in the police force in Hampshire. And where is actually some other police officers stepping forward and saying there is a problem within our police forces, that we always look upon the white lad as a racist and that the black person or brown person as somebody that we can believe? Honestly, this is a moment for our police force, but our politicians. I want to hear from the Home Secretary. She would have said it if that person had been black or brown. It
was Chris Philp who said, who echoed your sentiments, Kelvin. Before I come to you, Joe, let's have a quick look at what Hampshire Police's Deputy Chief Constable Robert France said. He apologised for his officers handcuffing the teenager as he bled to death, mistakenly thinking that he was the perpetrator. Have a listen.
Henry was the victim of this crime. And the fact that officers took several minutes to realise what had happened and to start to give Henry a first aid is something that I deeply regret. But they were operating with far less information than we have now, on the basis of lies, with a wound that was deep and internal, and where the bleeding, that significant bleeding, was not and could not have been immediately obvious to them, and where the pathologist has been clear that there's nothing they could have done that night that would have saved Henry's life.
Accept that Henry was a victim of an obsession with DEI, an obsession with race, and the police. And I'd have to say, I have some sympathy for the police.
No, I absolutely don't. I think Henry was the victim of appalling policing. You know, if you haven't got enough common sense to see that somebody is seriously injured, he wasn't resisting arrest. He didn't need to be handcuffed. You know, if there had been paramedics on site, they wouldn't have let the police handcuff somebody in that state. This is an absolute miscarriage of policing. So I don't think it's got anything to do with racism. As we know perfectly well, it has been indicated in many things, going back, as Kelvin knows, to Stephen Lawrence's murder, the appalling racism, particularly in the Metropolitan Police Force, which has seen crimes, terrible crimes, overlooked, dismissed, and so on and so forth. This is lazy, appalling policing, and I just think I completely agree with Kelvin. I would like to hear from the Home Secretary. I'd like to hear from the local MP. I'd like to hear from, you know, all sorts of campaigners, and I'd like to see the body cam footage of what happened on the night.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We need to see that, Kelvin, don't we, in order to make a clear judgment about what happened that night?
Well, I presume there is body cam, is there?
Yeah, there will be, but I think it will be up to Henry's parents, perhaps, if they would like
Right, well, that would be a tragedy for them. I don't want to... I see this as a much wider... I don't quite agree with Joe about this. I think this is a much wider death than just a mistake by police officers, because I feel in this country right now, in lots of different ways, that there are issues involving the white people of this country that get brushed under the carpet, and that if I'm a minority, I've suddenly got everybody and their wife saying, "Oh, isn't that terrible?" And if it happens to anybody white, oh well, you can suck that up. And so now we come to this, and I say again. Now, this case ended around about midday, 1 o'clock, isn't it? 1 o'clock this afternoon. So where are we now? 5 hours later. Right. Normally, if this had been the other way around, right, I tell you what, it would have happened the minute that the murder conviction was announced. Number 10, number 11, whoever, number 274 had already, well, you know, Joe, because that is your background, they would already have the statement ready to come saying that this was a disgraceful,
absolutely.
We can't let this happen again, another one dies.
There should be calls for a full inquiry. I'm not talking about a public inquiry, but the police should be referred or refer themselves to the Police Complaints Commission. I mean, can you imagine Henry Nowak's parents?
Oh, yes, I've been thinking about nothing else for the last 5 hours.
There he was, lying on the ground, attacked and handcuffed.
I know.
Handcuffed by police who are trained to do sort of first responder stuff. That is what is so shocking.
Yeah.
And, you know, this thing that this Deputy Chief Constable or whoever is saying, oh, they couldn't have saved him anyway. That is not the point. That is not...
It's the moment that he died. He died, an innocent man with handcuffs on, having been stabbed to death by some scumbag.
And the police took 3 minutes before they administered first aid.
Yeah, protesting is innocence, not being listened to.
Yeah.
But that's the point, isn't it? That the police arrived on the scene and they had heard on the call, because it was actually the perpetrator that made the call.
He did.
And called the police and said he had been the victim. I mean, it's more twisted than you can imagine. That he had been the victim of a racist slur and a racist attack. That is what then tipped the police to behave in the way that they did, didn't it?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, you know, you can think of several examples. The 2 sisters who were murdered in a London park and the way the police dealt with that.
There were black girls,
Yes.
those 2.
And the police were taking photographs and sharing them on WhatsApp. They were laughing about.
I think also the other thing that's got lost in the wash in all these things is the scumbag of a mother, right? Who then, rather than saying, "Oh, you should face the full force of the law. That's disgraceful." She then tries to hide the knife. And it wasn't so long ago that we had a fairly recent another case within that form of community in which the son was done for rape, and the mother tried to hide by speaking in her language away from it. But look, going back to this. I say, in the unlikely event that the Prime Minister, or even the less likely event that the Home Secretary is sitting watching your show tonight, that they should come on and say something. But why should it be down to us? Why should it be down to a TV show and a couple of panellists to make this point?
MP? You know, first and foremost...
Who is the local MP?
I've got no idea, because I don't know... I'm not quite sure where it happened. But
I don't know, but you're right, they haven't.
But where is the local MP who should have been aware of this? It happened last Christmas, or before Christmas. It must have been a big issue locally. Do you know? I know local press and all. Where's the MP ready to go with a statement?
It also makes a mockery as well about carrying these kirpans, I think they're called, these long knives.
And you don't
for
have to.
Religious reasons.
You can wear... It's called something else, and forgive me because I can't remember it, but you can wear it like a pendant. It is a ceremonial, so you can wear a pendant. Like, you don't have to carry it.
Let me tell you what the Sikh community have said, because I think this is a superb response, actually.
Right.
And frankly, there are similar cases where other communities don't come out and respond in this way. They've said, on behalf of Sikh organisations and communities across the country, we express our deepest condolences for the tragic loss of life, and our thoughts and prayers remain with the Nowak family and loved ones during this profoundly difficult time. They say this incident, as reported, does not align with the Sikh faith, the Sikh community, or the principles it stands for. They go on, Sikh teachings are founded on compassion, justice, humility, responsibility and service to humanity. The Sikh community remains peaceful, well integrated and a deeply valued part of British society.
Do you
what
know?
a fantastic statement.
Well, it may be a fantastic statement, but it sounds to me like you know, I've heard other statements from other religions who are ingrained in our society in which they refer to their religion as a religion of peace. You know, half an hour after a bomb's gone off at Manchester Arena and killed God knows how many people. I don't know the basis of the Sikh community, and that's a very nice thing to have said. I don't know how true it is. Well, if somebody could explain to me how unusual it is for somebody to be carrying around one of these knives, if you're a member of that Sikh community, perhaps they'd like to come on and tell you.
I think it's fairly common to carry these knives, but I think it's also very rare to see a murderous act carried out by one of them, which is why they got through the exceptions when the rules around knives were introduced.
But as I said, you don't have to carry one. That is not part of the requirement, because you can wear it as a pendant. You can wear it, you know, as a decorative item.
Are the Sikhs? I don't know. I'm asking the question. Are they peaceful, well integrated, and a deeply valued part of our British society?
Yes, I genuinely would.
Okay.
I would say, on the whole, yes.
Gentle, integrated.
And in a sense,
when he didn't get the email about being gentle, did he?
No, he didn't.
Well,
and obviously the family, as you say, is extremely dysfunctional to be trying to cover something up. But this isn't really a story about that, is it? It's a story about the police response to that.
Yeah.
It's a story about the fact that the police heard the word, I've been a victim of racism, and believed that before the poor, bleeding, white, lovely, by all accounts, innocent young man who's bleeding on the floor and pleading for somebody to help him, and he's ignored at the altar of What?
Well,
Kelvin?
The reality, if you're a police officer, what a nightmare job. What a nightmare
Couldn't
job.
agree more.
Every community is at you, and especially if you're a minority community, right? Despite the fact that the black-on-black crimes are off the scale in London, it is the white police officers' fault that either they're not being caught, not being protected, or the rest of it.
And as I have said, they have got a track record of appalling racism.
Well, of some racism, any more racism than exists on the other side of the fence.
We have to give the police, I think, a lot more freedom to make these judgments themselves without constantly being...
Not a judgment like this.
But the problem is the judgment is now...
Okay, but
can be incorrect because they're sort of triggered by the word racism. I don't like that word.
No.
But the word racism is causing them to focus on that,
I think it would be really interesting to hear the call, because actually you wouldn't expect the police to rush to somebody who is not injured badly.
That's what occurred to me.
That they are the victim of racism, because I'm sure that Hampshire is not so peaceful that there weren't other things going on. I mean, we've had the terrible rape case of the 3 boys who got away with rape. That was in Hampshire, as it turns out. So I don't believe for 1 minute that the police went there thinking, oh, it's racist, we must go.
They did get there very quickly. That's what's surprising to me. We don't know the nationality of the police officers, of course, remember?
No, I'd like to know that. And the other thing I'd like to know is I'd like an explanation from the Chief Constable, who I can't imagine there is much going on in his or her life, right, that they feel that this was not important enough for them to address the nation. This is not quite our George Floyd, right? I accept that. No. Although he did use the word breath. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
right?
I can't read.
So it's not quite our George Floyd. It's very close to it. And yet we have a Chief Constable who says, I tell you what, I'll wheel out my deputy. I think that's appalling, and I would, if I were the Home Secretary, I'd want an explanation of that. But I first want to hear from a Labour politician at the top level of our country explaining how we are going to try and make our police force pro-white as well as pro-minority.
Well, there's actually to deal with the problem as they see it.
And there are so many questions, we need to move on, but there are so many questions being raised by this that really, I've been asking you at home, do you want to see the body cam footage? Is it the situation in which we feel like we need to answer some of these very pressing questions? A spokesman for the Independent Office for Police Conduct said, our thoughts and sympathies are with Henry Nowak's family and everyone affected by his death. We are independently investigating the contacts Hampshire and Isle of Wight officers had with Mr Nowak prior to his death on December